กาสค่ะ This question is from an anonymous physical retreatant. Dear respected Ajahn, I would like to seek your guidance on this. When cultivating the meditation on 32 body parts, contemplating the bones of the body, do we need to look at pictures of the skeleton and remember how they look, and keep recalling and imagining your own skeleton during meditation? How to develop samadhi during walking meditation? If you observe bones during walking meditation, do you also recall and imagine your own bones while walking?
So the contemplation of the 32 parts of the body, we take up one of the parts for contemplation. And in the beginning, this is using our memories and perceptions first. So we can contemplate the hair of the head, hair of the body, the nails, teeth, skin, and we can imagine it as a image, or we can contemplate the inner organs or the skeleton, the bones. Can you imagine the skeleton, the bones, the head, bones in the head, the bones in the chest, the back, the legs, the feet, hands, fingers. If we contemplate it by using a meditation repetition, and we can use atikang patikulang, which is this heap of bones is unattractive or loathsome, disgusting. We can contemplate from the top of the head down to the bottom of our feet, contemplating the bones like this, back and forth, going back and forth. And so this is using sanya perception first. It's not yet seeing clearly into it. We can imagine that if someone dies, then their bones originally are of a white color and will change to a more brownish color, and later to a darker brown until black, and then decompose into the earth completely, and we see that there's no self in it. So we can contemplate like this heap of bones or the skeleton, and we can see that when someone has died, then the after or the flesh has decayed off, then there's the bone. When it comes to just being the bones left, there's the sinews that the bones become scattered apart and separated from each other, and we can see that there's no self there. And this is a perception that we bring up. This is sanya aramana. It's a subha sanya. It's a perception of the unattractive, the loathsome. We can see the body as being loathsome. And then when we see this, the mind is at ease. There's some samadhi that's arising, and we keep practicing like this often. And we may have an image come up of the skeleton of our bodies, and we can take up one part of the body, of the bones, and just try to see into that clearly. We may have an image come up as a nimitta, as a vision, because we're contemplating like this, where we see an image of the bones there, a heap of bones, and seeing the bones as being loathsome, unattractive. And if we continue on like this, then it can be an image that is always present in our vision. If whenever we whenever we think of it, then the image comes up like that. Or we can begin by looking at pictures of a skeleton. And so this is using our perceptions. We're remembering where the bones are placed and how many bones there are in the fingers, the back, the leg, the feet. And we're bringing up this as a perception. We're thinking about this only and not thinking about other things. And in this way, then the mind is at ease. Can see that there's no self there in it, and the feeling that arises in the mind is a feeling of ease. And if we can do this often, and we become skilled in this contemplation, then we can have piti, rapture arise. There's a feeling of samvega, dispassion, and we can see this body or what we're contemplating as not beautiful, being unattractive. And then this is when the rapture arises and the mind is peaceful. So when we contemplate in this way, then we may have some samadhi arise. So there's maybe a small amount of samadhi arise that we call a kanika samadhi, like a temporary or momentary samadhi. And we may see just for a flash very clearly into the body as being bones and the mind is peaceful briefly. And as we keep practicing onwards, then we may see even clearer, or we can have this clarity stay for longer periods of time, and the peace in the mind grows, and we have rapture arising because we see the truth. The mind is then radiant or bright. If we see the body as being beautiful, then the mind has attraction, liking there. This is the mind that is papasara, radiant, but the defilements come over or cover over it. But if we see the body as being not beautiful, then the mind becomes bright. There's peacefulness that arises, and we can contemplate like this in this way, and the mind is brought close to being peaceful. We can enter samadhi, and if we develop it further, it can even be appana samadhi, one-pointedness. And we can see the bones very clearly, and then the mind is brought to complete stillness or one-pointedness. And so this is the meditation that can lead to appana samadhi, full concentration. But this is still samatha, it's still just tranquility, a method to bring the mind to peace. But there may be a time when we see the bones that they decay and break apart, and then we see that there's no self in it. This is the mind then that has emptiness, and this is vipassana, this is insight, and the wisdom arises. Seeing the body as being the elements of earth, air, fire, and water. This is a meditation object contemplating 4 elements, and we can see then the body as being empty. And this is also a samatha, a calming meditation method. So you should use the kammatthana, the object or meditation object that you are skilled at, and don't have doubts about that. And just use that object that you are skilled at. And may this bring your mind to peace, to have samadhi, and then you will be able to develop that to wisdom and be able to see the Dhamma. when you're walking meditation, you can also contemplate the skeleton as well while you're walking. You are restrained and you can contemplate the bones, uh, the foot stepping as being the bones, or the arms moving as being bones. And if the mind is peaceful, you may be able to see the walking is simply just a skeleton walking. You can contemplate then like that as being a skeleton. But in the beginning, it may be difficult to do this. You can use the repetition, a mental repetition of skeleton, or atikang, patikulang, and repeat that while you're walking meditation. And you can also bring up an image of that as well while you're doing that. And this can bring the mind to peace. And this is also the same for the other postures as well. Whether you're sitting, standing, or lying down, you can also have this or maintain this contemplation, and you do it until you're skilled. In the time of the Buddha, there was a woman who was in the city of Kurarat, and they all practiced the 4 Satipatthanas, foundations of mindfulness there. And she was following what the Buddha taught of meditating on a skeleton. And she had a pet bird, and an eagle came down, swooped down to catch her pet bird. And because she was skilled in this contemplation of skeleton, then she just contemplated it as being a skeleton catching another skeleton. And so her mind didn't have any liking or disliking there present. There wasn't a bird there, it was or a pet bird there, it was just a skeleton. So there's an inner skeleton and the outer skeleton. And we can, if we're able to practice like this, and where will liking or desire then be found? Where will there be liking for another person? Was there just simply a skeleton? If they die from us, then why why would we have liking or disliking there? It's simply a skeleton that's passing away from us. Or if it's a loved one, a relative, it's just a skeleton that's passing away from us. And so contemplating like this, we can bring the mind to peace. And this is a tranquility method, samatha. And if we see the skeleton as decaying, disintegrating, breaking apart, then we can see, and we see that there's no us there, there's no self there, then this is vipassana, and we can then see the Dhamma.
ขอโอกาสค่ะ This question is from an anonymous physical retreatant. Dear respected Ajahn, since it is anatta, why do we still need to practice? Dhamma practice is to overcome defilements and the suffering that arises from defilements, so that we can be free from suffering. So then, who is it that becomes an Arahant?
This question about anatta, non-self. So we have learned that rupa, nama, material and mental phenomenal body and mind are anatta. We chant that the form, feelings, perceptions, formations, sense consciousness is impermanent, and what is impermanent is unsatisfactory, it is not a self. And they have this in the Mahayana chant as well, talking about emptiness, that form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. And the other aggregates of feelings, perceptions, formations, sense consciousness are emptiness as well. They're anatta. So this is the sutta the Buddha gave about the anatta lakkhana sutta. And on hearing this, the 5 Panchavaggiya attained to becoming arahants. And so asking, why do we practice if everything is anatta? This is because the mind doesn't yet see it. It is still deluded. That which is impermanent, suffering, and not self, the mind that is deluded, that is ignorant, it sees it as being permanent, as being happiness and a self and beautiful. So this delusion then is the cause for suffering to arise. How much we can reduce that delusion, then that's the amount that we'll be able to reduce our suffering. So we practice to free ourselves from suffering. The one who has practiced then to free themselves from suffering, then they know that suffering simply arises and ceases. The mind doesn't attach to that at all. It doesn't associate. It's not related to it. It's free. It's liberated by it. It's radiant. It doesn't become polluted again. And so we ask, who is an Arahant? Who is the one that becomes an Arahant? There's the mind that has this knowing, this knowledge. It's abandoned that sense of self. It's abandoned all the mental defilements. And in convention or conventional terms, we call this being an Arahant. This is one who doesn't come back to be reborn again. They've abandoned all the defilements. But in terms of vimutti, of this liberation, then or ultimate reality, then it isn't anyone there. There isn't anyone who is an Arahant. But in conventional terms, we say, oh, that person is an Arahant, or this person is an Arahant. But the mind, that mind itself doesn't, there's no thought of it that it is an Arahant. And so Venerable Ajahn Chah, he would give teachings and lead his disciples in Dhamma practice, and his disciples would follow that, and they would learn and practice Dhamma, and from this they gained faith, and they had the faith that Venerable Ajahn Chah was an Arahant, and that's their thoughts and clinging that they wanted their teacher to be an Arahant. But for himself, for Venerable Ajahn Chah, he wasn't. He didn't cling on to anything. He didn't hold on to anything. But it was the lay people who really wanted him to be something. But for himself, he would say that he's not anything. I'm not anything at all. Not a Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant. Because if we are anything, then that is suffering. That is a sense of self. If then we think that, oh, we are an Arahant, and then someone else comes along and they don't believe us, but we say we are an Arahant, and then there's an arguments, disputes arising from that, and then that's an Arahant that has defilements coming up. But Ajahn Chah or the Arahant would not think that they are anything, because there's to be anything is suffering. And so Ajahn Chah would say it isn't there. There isn't. I'm not anything, and there's also nothing to be. And so this is a very deep statement there about being an Arahant. And so they've let go. We just conventionally, we talk about things like because one has let go of a sense of self, one's let go of their defilements to this level, then we call them a Sotapanna, or they've let go of, they only have one more birth to come back to, then we may call them a Sakadagami, or they're non-returner, and we call that Anagami. Or if they've abandoned all the kilesas, the defilements, then we call them an Arahant. So because they've abandoned their defilements to a certain level, then we call them something conventionally speaking. but for themselves, they're not anything, they're not this or that.